Welcome, everyone. Today we will discuss what would have happened if no one won World War One. Now, as a bit of historical context, World War One, also known as the Great War, started in 1914. Although tensions had already existed between Europe's great powers and alliances had always shifted, the spark that ignited the Great War came during the assassination of Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo by Bosnian Serb nationalist Gavrilo Princip. This caused the July Crisis, and by the end of the summer, Germany said it would support Austria-Hungary in whatever action it took. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia protected Serbia, so Germany declared war on Russia. Russia was allied with France, so Germany declared war on France and initiated the Schlieffen Plan. In it, Germany would send its troops into France through Belgium. Belgium refused to allow German troops through its borders, so Germany declared war on them. Britain protected Belgium, so declared war on Germany. The Western Front slowly locked down into trench warfare, while the East initially saw Russia make great gains against Austria-Hungary and even Germany. But then Germany moved some troops east and greatly pushed back Russia. Later on, the Entente were joined by Italy and Japan, while the Central Powers were joined by the Ottoman Empire and Bulgaria. By 1916, it was anyone's war, and only time would tell who breaks first. That would be Russia, who, by 1917, would have a revolution, forcing the Tsar to abdicate. This would be followed by another revolution, putting the communists in charge. They would try a policy of no war, no peace with the Germans, where they wouldn't fight, but there would be no peace. This went about as well as expected, and Russia was forced to sign the humiliating Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, after which the Russian Civil War started. This caused huge relief for the Central Powers, and Germany focused its efforts solely on the Western Front. But due to several incidents, German-American relations soured. The final straw was the Zimmermann telegram, and by late 1917, America declared war on the Central Powers. Germany started one final offensive before the American troops arrived, by the end of which several mutinies started in port cities throughout the German Empire, culminating in the German Revolution, by the end of which all the monarchs in the German Empire abdicated. The Central Powers soon seek peace. Bulgaria fell first after the Greek entry, followed by the Ottoman Empire, while Austria-Hungary fell to national movements and revolutions. And finally, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, Germany sued for peace, causing the end of the First World War. But what if things went differently? Today we will answer that question, but before starting the scenario, I'd greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel, as it would help me create more alternate history scenarios just like this. I would also create a schedule for my videos, so keep that in mind. But without any further ado, let's start the scenario. Our point of divergence would need to be before the war. For that, we would need to go to 1911, the year that the Russian Prime Minister Pyotr Stolypin was assassinated in the Kiev Opera by an anarchist. Right next to Stolypin was the Tsar, who in this timeline would be shot instead of Stolypin. This would result in a regency under Stolypin due to the former Tsar's son being too young to rule. Stolypin would push through reforms making Russia more equipped and competent than in our timeline. The Great War would start in the same way, but in the Eastern Front, Russia would perform better and manage to hold off the Germans better than in our timeline. We would also have the Brusilov offensive be more successful, resulting in Austria being weaker, although Russia eventually gets pushed back like in our timeline. We would also have incidents like the sinking of American ships by the Germans and the Zimmermann telegram never happening, which would become important later on. The war would go on for some time, but by late 1917, Tsar Alexei would get assassinated and turmoil would engulf Russia. Though Stolypin would still hold on to power and continue Russian involvement in the war. Here, America doesn't join due to no incidents, and the war drags on till early 1918, and Greece would have the king win the Civil War, resulting in no Greek entry. By mid 1918, the turmoil in Russia would cause the Russian Civil War, with the Germans imposing a slightly less harsh Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, while in the West, the war continues like it did in our timeline. In the Middle East, the Ottomans would continue struggling against the Arabs and the British, and would eventually take a more defensive stance to defend Anatolia, while Italy would manage to push deep into Austrian territory, even landing in Dalmatia. By early 1919, Austria-Hungary would collapse, and with Germany annexing Austria and Bohemia. By mid-1919, both sides would try a final offensive, both of which would fail. In German port cities, sailors would start a mutiny, starting the German Revolution, while mass desertions and mutinies would cause a huge loss of French soldiers. All sides would agree to an armistice and eventually a peace deal mediated by the United States. In the peace deal, France would retake Alsace-Lorraine and Belgium would be compensated with Eupen and Malmedy. Italy would receive Istria, Tyrol, and even Dalmatia, while Bulgaria would get to keep all its captured territory. Serbia would be allowed expansion into most of Bosnia, with some border territories going to Croatia. Hungary would lose some border territory to Serbia and Croatia, while southern Transylvania goes to Romania, leaving both of them unsatisfied. Germany would be allowed to annex Austria and the Sudetenland, but the rest of Czechoslovakia remains independent. In the east, Germany would be allowed to keep all its gains except Ukraine, which would become independent like Finland. In Africa, the German colonies are divided in the same way. Finally, in the Middle East, the Ottomans would lose Hijaz, Palestine, and most of Syria and Iraq, but would be allowed to keep northern Syria and Iraq. The war has ended, and the peace agreement left most major powers unsatisfied. While in the east, the Russian Civil War continues. Most of the white forces are led by Admiral Kolchak, who would receive significant aid from the Entente and the German Empire, who would want a communist state near them. While in Germany, the German Civil War starts due to the peace deal, as many soldiers feel the war was for nothing. These soldiers then joined the revolution as it quickly spread to the rest of northern Germany, causing the German Civil War. France and Britain would be too exhausted to intervene, but would disagree on who to support. France would want to support the revolution in hopes of weakening Germany, while Britain would want to prevent the spread of communism. While the German Civil War goes from bad to worse for the old guard, some anti-communists in Austria would break away from Germany with the help of Italy. Soon after, the rest of Germany falls to communism, with the German Civil War ending. This would send shockwaves around Europe, with revolutionaries in Britain and France being inspired to start their own revolution, which in France would be suppressed, leading to the country becoming more far right. In the east, the German satellite states would break their ties with the mainland and would work together with each other to stop German and Russian expansionism. In Russia, the whites win the Civil War, with the country becoming more far right and dictatorial. In the 1920s, Britain would soon face a communist insurgency funded by the German Spartacists. This would quickly spread throughout the Isles, and the British Isles would fall to communism, with Ireland taking Northern Ireland. The behemoth that was the British Empire would be cut off from the head, the royal family and most of the loyalists flee to Canada, while in India it is still allowed independence on the terms that it does not support the communists in Europe. Places like Palestine, Iraq, and Egypt declare independence. British Malaya would come under joint Franco-Japanese occupation, with Japan soon taking the colony for themselves, souring relations with France. France would also take Sudan to connect the rest of its empire. Other places like Somalia would fall to Italian occupation. In the aftermath, France and Italy grow closer together to combat the red threat of the German Socialist Republic and the British Union, while in the east, Russia starts preparing for grand reconquest of its lost territory in Eastern Europe. In the 1930s, after the Great Depression, things would get worse, and Europe once again prepares for war. It can start by any way. Either Germany starts by attacking Austria, or France attacks Germany, but that isn't important. As soon by the late 1930s, France and Italy go to war with Britain and Germany. Germany and Italy quickly turn Austria into their battleground, while Britain blockades France and attempts a landing in Normandy. In the east, Russia starts its reconquest of Eastern Europe, with all the Eastern European states rallying behind Poland and forming the Intermarium. They soon stabilize the front and even kick Russia back at certain points. In the west, by 1940, Germany manages to kick Italy out of Austria and starts an offensive in northern Italy. Communist insurgents also become active in Italy, further weakening them. In France, Germany starts an offensive in Alsace-Lorraine, while Britain attacks Normandy. The communists in France also become active, and by the end of 1941, Italy and France fall to communist revolutions and sue for peace. France would only lose some border regions to Germany, Italy would lose northern Tyrol, and Germany would annex Austria. All four states would grow closer together to spread communism in Europe. In the east, Russia eventually loses and sues for peace, losing territory to the Intermarium. The French government goes to exile in Algeria, while the Commune of France comes to power in France. Mussolini would flee to Libya, while the rest of Italy turned into the Italian Socialist Republic. The Second World War ends, with Marxist prophecy coming true, and the Red Dawn descending upon Europe. But this is where I'll end the scenario. If you liked it, please consider subscribing and leave your thoughts in the comments down below. But for now, goodbye and see you in the next video.